The summer nights in the mountains were quieter than usual. My friend Mark and I decided it was time to try camping in one of the abandoned parks, far away from the usual crowded spots. We had found an old map at a local shop, and we were told that the park used to be full of activity until it was shut down due to a strange accident that occurred there. Even the trail leading to the site was unmarked in some places, and most of the map was unclear. But we were eager for the adventure, so we decided to go for it. We arrived in the early afternoon and started setting up camp. The park was full of thick bushes and tall trees all around us. The place seemed eerily quiet, almost too quiet. There were old paths, but they were overgrown, showing that the place had been abandoned for years. As we were sorting out our gear, we discovered something odd. Strange marks on the ground, like footprints that didn't belong there. We decided to go for a walk on the trail to see if we could figure out what was going on. Eventually, we made our way to one of the old towers in the park. It looked like it hadn't been used in a long time, but there were signs that someone had been there recently. There were strange things on the ground, like blood-covered handprints, and something about the place just didn't sit right with us. Then, from the distance, we noticed movement between the trees. We barely caught a glimpse of a group of people, maybe 4 or 5 of them, walking slowly through the forest. We were surprised to see anyone else out here, especially since no one was supposed to be at the campsite. From where we stood, we couldn't make out their faces, but we saw their figures moving through the woods. We tried pointing them out to Mark, but by the time he came over to look, they were gone, swallowed up by the forest. We figured we had imagined it and carried on with the day, talking and relaxing as the sun began to set. We built a small campfire and sat around it. The night was calm at first, just the sound of our voices and the crackling of the fire. Then, we heard something else. It was faint, but we both heard it. Voices, multiple voices, talking to each other. We couldn't tell what they were saying or even if they were speaking in our language. The voices came from way out in the trees, and that's what made it even more unsettling. Mark and I didn't know what to do, so we stayed still for a while, listening. The voices didn't move. They stayed in the same spot. Then, without warning, they went silent. The next minute was unnerving. We didn't hear them fade out or leave. They just stopped, like they were still there. Then there were footsteps, just one set, coming toward us. A few seconds later, a man walked out of the dark and into the light of our campfire. He had a distinct red baseball cap. His smile was wide as he approached us. "Do either of you know where the trail is around here?" I pointed ahead and told him where the trail was, but when he didn't move or say anything else, I asked, "Are the others with you?" His face dropped for a moment before he smiled again. He looked back toward where I had been looking and said, "I didn't know there were others out here. I've been hiking alone. I would have asked them for directions if I'd seen them." It was strange. I was sure he was lying. He came from the same direction we just heard the voices in. I just nodded, but something felt off. He smiled again and walked back toward the trail. Mark and I exchanged glances. We both knew something wasn't right. There was no way he came from the same direction as the voices and didn't know about them. But why was he lying? Why didn't he want to tell us about the others? We spent the next 30 minutes around the campfire, discussing what was going on. The whole time, I felt like we were being watched. I kept turning around, checking the trees and the trail. Something wasn't right. It didn't help that it was our first time so far out like this, and our nerves were already on edge. "Should we leave?" Mark finally asked, his voice shaky. I thought for a moment. "Yeah, let's go." We started packing, but the feeling only got worse. The more we packed, the more it felt like something was wrong. Just as we threw our bags on our shoulders and stomped out the campfire, a single footstep crunched behind me. We both whipped our heads around. Without the fire, it was pitch black. The woods were eerily silent now. For a moment, I hesitated. I fumbled for my flashlight in my backpack, took it out, and turned it on. There, standing only 10 or 15 feet in front of me, was the same man with the red baseball cap. He was staring at us, his blank expression unsettling. He wore that same wide smile, his eyes cold and lifeless. In a panic, I turned off the light and both of us sprinted toward the trail. Disturbingly, I could hear multiple footsteps behind us, some of them sounding like they were running through the woods beside us. The footsteps faded, but we kept running, desperate. We made it back to the car, out of breath but unharmed. We drove away, shaken but relieved. We still don't know what happened that night. Who was out there? Why were they hiding? It's been a long time since, but I don't think I'll ever go camping again. I was 16 when I got a job at a local pizza place. After working there for about 6 months, I managed to save up enough to buy a cheap car. I hated not being able to drive myself, but I was excited to start making deliveries instead of working inside the shop all the time. It was a regular weeknight, and I had just gotten in after school around 5 p.m. My shift was until 10:30, and things were pretty quiet. It was busy for the first couple of hours, but by 8 p.m., it abruptly slowed down. There were no deliveries to make, and I was just sitting around waiting. But around 9, an order came through. Just 2 medium pizzas, and it was headed to a house on the outskirts of the city. I grabbed the order and started driving. It wasn't busy out, just a few cars here and there. But after I had been on the road for about 5 minutes, I noticed a car pull onto the road from a side street and start following me. The roads were empty, and they could have easily passed me, but they stayed right behind me. I didn't think much of it at first, to be honest. It was just another car, right? But as the next 5 minutes passed, the car remained right behind me. I made a turn into the neighborhood, and when I glanced in my mirror, I saw their headlights appear, turning onto the road I was driving on. That felt like a strange coincidence. What were the chances that the only other car on the road would be headed to the same small neighborhood as me? I guess it was possible, but it made me more aware of the situation. I kept driving. This road was through the woods, with individual houses spread out on either side. Some were right up against the road, while others had long driveways leading to their homes. As I drove deeper into the neighborhood, I finally saw the mailbox with the right address. I turned into the driveway and checked my mirrors again. A few seconds later, the car passed by and continued down the road. I remember feeling relieved, thinking it was just a coincidence and that I was overthinking things. I drove up to the end of the driveway, which wasn't too long, maybe about 200 feet. I parked, grabbed the pizzas, and walked up to the door. I knocked a couple of times. The porch light was on, but none of the interior lights were. No one answered at first. I knocked again, and about 30 seconds later, a woman opened the door. She looked to be in her early 30s, wearing a nightgown, and appeared tired. She said she hadn't ordered any pizza, and that she had been trying to sleep. She seemed annoyed, but, understandably, was probably just woken up. I apologized and turned around to walk back to my car, but something caught my attention. When I looked up, I froze. The same car that had been following me was now parked right behind my car. The headlights were off, but I could see the fog coming from the exhaust, meaning the engine was still running. I felt an instant rush of unease. Had they been living there with the woman? Or was it something related to the pizza order? Either way, everything felt wrong, too coincidental. I rushed to my car and got in, tossing the pizzas onto the passenger seat. I started the car, but the vehicle behind me didn't move. The driveway was tight, and there wasn't really any space to go around them. So I pulled forward toward the house, hoping they'd see that I was trying to leave. But the car remained right in the middle of the driveway, blocking my exit. We both sat there for about 30 seconds, just staring at each other in silence. Then everything clicked. The car had been following me. The timing was no coincidence, and the car blocking me in wasn't just a mistake. They were setting up a trap. I started to panic, and in that moment I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I didn't know what to do. Then, without warning, 2 men got out of the car. They were wearing black hoodies and hats, their faces mostly hidden. They started walking towards my car quickly. I hit the gas immediately, trying to drive around them and past their car, but there wasn't enough room. The wheels slipped off the driveway, and I skidded in the dirt, ramming into a tree. It wasn't a hard crash, but it was enough to stop me from driving further. I didn't take any chances. I jumped out of the car and started running. I could hear one of them yelling and chasing after me, but after a few moments, their footsteps faded. I ran through the woods, trying to keep my bearings. Once I was far enough away, I quickly pulled out my phone and called 911. The police arrived, but by the time they got to the scene, the car and the men were gone. My car was never recovered. Later, I learned from the police that this was a common scam. These men used random addresses to lure delivery drivers in, hoping to trap them and steal their cars, or worse. The fact that one of them chased me makes me think they didn't intend to let me go. I got lucky that night.
I wasn't even supposed to take that delivery. It was already 1:47 in the morning. We were about to close. The phone rang. Everyone looked at each other. My manager answered it, and then looked at me. It was only 10 minutes away, but I didn't recognize the address, and I'd been delivering around here for over a year. The GPS told me to turn onto a narrow gravel driveway. There was no mailbox, no visible house from the road. Finally, I saw it. An old house. No lights on, not a single one. When I stepped out of the car, I noticed something. The front door was slightly open. I knocked, no answer. I knocked again. That's when I heard it, breathing, right behind the door. "Delivery," I said. Then I heard a whisper. "Come in." "I can't enter the house. I need you to come to the door." "Just put it on the table inside," the voice said. That's when I became aware of something else. How far I was from the road. How nobody would hear anything out here. "I'm leaving it on the porch." No response. The breathing stopped. As I stepped back, the door creaked. It opened a little more. I didn't wait. I turned and walked fast. Then I started running. I got in the car, locked the doors, and drove. Halfway down the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I saw something. It wasn't on the porch. It wasn't at the door. It was standing at the edge of the trees. When I got back to the shop, my manager looked confused. That house was foreclosed last year. No one lives there. My manager asked what took so long. I told him the house felt wrong. He looked at the receipt. Then his expression changed. That property was foreclosed last year. No one lives there. We tried calling the number. It was disconnected. Cash payment. I never went back. And they don't take deliveries after 1:30 anymore. But sometimes